Those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. This is Success with Srini.
Welcome back to Success with Srini. Happy July 4th to you. Happy Monday morning to you. On the podcast today, I'm answering a question that has come in from a listener of this podcast asking me, how do I respond to this? Srini, every time people ask me what I do not know what to say. I keep saying multiple things to people. Even at home, I don't know what to say. Recently, I went to a couple of interviews and I was asked the question on what I do, and I told completely two different things. Is it normal or something is wrong with me? Okay. Well, nothing wrong with you. So all is well. This is a common problem. It's a common question I get. So let's get into this. Hopefully, by the time we are done with the podcast today, I have created the independence that you are seeking from this problem. This is an issue. When people ask, what do you do? Even to me, I have a trouble explaining what I do. In different contexts, I say, well, I'm a coach, I'm a mentor, a speaker, I'm a trainer, I'm an author. Different things I say. But then that's not what I would like to say. I want to say only one thing and I want to be done with it. So I want to be consistent with that message. And I struggled with it personally for a long time. And eventually I arrived on my statement, which is I turn around people. So somebody asked me, what do you do? Well, I help people to turn around. Or I turn around people, something like that. And the follow-up question is, how do you do that? Or what is it? Then I explain, saying, well, I do, people have problems, people have issues, and I help them to overcome those issues using different tools and techniques. And as a result of that, I speak, I train, all that. So I kind of expand on that. But my instant 2.5 second response is, I turn around people. Now, I did not arrive on that statement overnight, and it took me a lot of time. So I went through multiple different definitions of who I am. And I don't think it's complete even today. So it's going to evolve, it's going to change, and who knows how life is going to be from 2 years from now or 5 years from now, or maybe, who knows? Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. But then this is the evolution. This process is incremental. So there isn't a point where I can say, this is who I am, this is what I do. We live in a world where we all play different roles now. We have different titles, we have different responsibilities, and it's natural to have different identities. So your question is not hard, your question is not difficult. Everybody goes through it, you are not alone in this. Now that being said, you also need to have what we call an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is something that you tell people whom you meet randomly on an elevator. Let's say you are going up an elevator or coming down an elevator, and you meet somebody in that elevator and they ask you what you do. And by the time the elevator hits the ground or hits the floor that you are going up, by the time you leave the elevator or they leave the elevator, you need to tell them what you do. How do you say it? But what do you say? Now, how do you arrive to what you have to say? So let's talk about those things. I'm going to share some ideas with you. Hopefully this is going to help. If it is, then by all means, please do let me know with a review or a comment or a text message. The best way to really put this together, an incredible elevator pitch or something that you can explain in a minute or less, under 60 seconds, is you can come up with anything that you want to say. And that's what people do. That's what probably you're doing on the fly. But there is power if you become strategic about this and you do some homework and you come up with something that you would like to say that not only sounds good to the listener, but also sounds good inward to you. That means whatever you're saying is coming from the core of your heart, truly represents who you are, represents your values, represents your beliefs, and in a way also implies to the listener that there are certain goals that you have that you want to accomplish as a result of expressing whatever you're trying to express. So whatever you say, that has to somehow imply, or that has to sound as if you're also seeking some goals that for yourself in a professional setup also. And in my opinion, every setup is a professional setup. If you're saying something outside, you'd rather be saying that inside also. There is nothing called, if I meet somebody who is in my professional network, I'm going to tell them something in a certain way. If I'm meeting somebody else outside, I'm going to tell them something in a different way, or the same thing in a different way. It doesn't make any sense. You'd rather be consistent across the board. And I think that's the question we're asking anyway. So to do this, the first and the foremost thing is you got to know who you are. You need to know your strengths. You need to know your weaknesses. I'll tell you why. Because the things that you perceive as your strength, that's not what people outside perceive. Something that happened that went wrong with me personally. People perceive that I'm a speaker. I never perceived myself as a speaker. But every listener on the radio, through my radio shows, they were tuning in because they thought I'm a good speaker. But I never, if you listen to this podcast or any podcast here, there are numerous mistakes I make. I don't get my words right. I can't put two lines together. I digress from the point, and I sometimes speak louder and sometimes overspeak on my own thoughts. Well, I have issues. I don't see it myself, but they see it that way. So a strength for me is a weakness for them. A weakness for me is a strength for them in their perception. So what I suggest you do is, let's take this question more in a job context, because you said you went for a couple of interviews. So I want you to go and meet some of your coworkers, people with whom you worked in the past, and people with whom you may work also now, today. Let's take your current situation. And I want you to ask them how they perceive you. Ask them what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. I want you to have a discussion with them about you as if you are interviewing them about you. So kind of you are introspecting yourself through them. Now, I want you to also write down your strengths and weaknesses. So you know your strengths and weaknesses according to you, and then you go talk to these people and ask them how they perceive you. So now you have two sets of data. One that the way you see, and a set of data the way they see. Usually there is a gap. There's always a gap. And that is the gap you want to fill with your introduction, with your explanation of who you are in that elevator pitch. When you do that, then you don't feel bad about yourself. Okay? Now, once you hear what they said and once you have your stuff, your job is to sit down and keep writing multiple different paragraphs about who you are. And you come up with multiple versions of who you are. Now, there are a few things you need to have in these statements. Your statement has to have clarity. This is who I am, this is what I do, and this is how I've done, and this is what I plan on doing. Something like that. So you have to have clarity across these areas. And you should also quantify achievements in that write-up as you're writing these things that you have achieved. And when you write this, you have to write it by creating enough interest in the listener. The listener has to feel, okay, whatever he's saying or she's saying, yeah, I want to hear more about you. I want to hear more about them. Something like that. So the listener is in focus. You are not in focus. So when you're writing this, make sure that whoever is going to listen, how should they listen to this? And whatever your strengths are, you need to accentuate that in that. So kind of strength, you kind of position them in such a way that it kind of amplifies you, who you are. Now, you write. This is the writing part. This is coming up with the content part. The second part is to rehearse this. You got to rehearse it. You got to try this. Who knows which version you like. So whatever you have said so far to people, go back in time, remind, kind of recollect them and come up with all the different versions. And now you have in front of you 3 or 4 different paragraphs talking about you. And that has, these paragraphs have clarity, they have your achievements quantified, and they are listener focused, and they're also amplifying your strengths. Now, as you start reading them, you will start identifying yourself with one or two at the most. Your job is to identify yourself with one or two, not all 5, or not all 10. And you rehearse, you practice, and you practice to a point where if somebody wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and asks you, hey, what do you do? I help people do this and this. For example, I help people overcome, turn around their lives, whether it's professional, financial, relational, whatever that life is. And I do that using a bunch of tools and techniques. So if you wake me up in the morning and say, what's your one-liner? I know my one-liner. I turn around people. What's my one paragraph? I know my one paragraph. So you should be able to wake up at any point in time, even if you are distracted, you're in the middle of something that you're doing and somebody tries to get your attention and ask you, hey, what do? You should be able to say. Unconsciously how to say. And then just keep trying. There's no other way I can add to this. So you're rehearsing this, and you are trying to saying that to people in the interviews, whatever, and see what kind of response you're getting. So in a way, you're getting the feedback. And then as you say things to people, make sure that you listen and you kind of pick whether they are paying attention to what you're saying or they are, kind of read as you are saying this, so that you know what kind of changes you can make to this. And then as you are doing this, obviously you need to be confident about yourself. So anything that you say, if you're not confident, it doesn't come across anyway. And then if somebody asks you more, be prepared to give more. Like usually I get that question, as I said, hey, you turn around people, how do you do that? Well, I explain to them, right? I give them more context. So that's it. That's all there is to this. And again, I oversimplified this maybe on this podcast, but that's how I would do it. And again, by the way, this whole thing not only just becomes your pitch, but this also becomes your profile intro on your LinkedIn, or this could be the intro paragraph on your resume. I mean, there are different places where you can use this content. Okay, so that's all for now. I hope this is helpful. If it is, as I said, do let me know. And you have a wonderful Independence Day. And I will catch up with you as early as tomorrow. Thank you.